Usually when we look at a highly successful business, there's this expectation of like total engineering precision.
Oh, absolutely. The whole well-oiled machine thing.
Right. It's like looking under the hood of a Formula One car. Every single component has a dedicated purpose. The telemetry is perfect. The pit crew moves in absolute synchronization.
Yeah, and the mechanics can point to the engine and tell you exactly how it generates power.
Exactly. But then you actually lift the hood on the average job or the average business, and that fantasy of precision just vanishes immediately.
It's usually a mess.
It really is. Instead of a Formula One engine, we are usually looking at this chaotic landscape held together by, duct tape, reactive panic, and just exhausted people running around constantly putting out fires.
Putting out fires just to survive the day. Which, honestly, is the absolute definition of working harder, not smarter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a state of perpetual motion without any actual forward momentum.
And that dynamic is exactly what we are dismantling today. So, welcome to this deep dive. If you've ever felt like your workday is just one long string of interruptions, or, that your team is plateauing no matter how hard everyone paddles, you are in the right place.
You really are.
Because we are unpacking the core blueprints from Chet Holmes's Manual for Business Mastery, The Ultimate Sales Machine. And his whole argument is that turning a chaotic, duct-taped mess into a high-performance engine doesn't require learning 4,000 new, shiny strategies.
No, not at all.
It requires learning just 12 things and executing them 4,000 times.
Which is such a shift in mindset. Because the climate we're operating in today is fiercely competitive. You are either burning out or you are systematically figuring out how to perfect your management, your training, and your marketing.
Right.
And what Holmes brings to the table is a philosophy focused entirely on implementation.
And he has a very specific term for what that implementation requires. 2 words. Pigheaded discipline.
Pigheaded discipline and determination. Because, look, having a great idea is easy. Everyone has ideas. But having the discipline to ruthlessly enforce a new standard day after day, that's where most people fail.
So let's start with the biggest barrier to that discipline. Because to implement anything, you first need the actual time to do it.
Right. And you need margin.
Exactly. And Holmes identifies the single biggest killer of productivity in any office. He calls it reactive management, or the got-a-minute culture.
Oh, man. It is a pervasive psychological trap. I mean, Holmes shares this incredible story from his time running 9 different divisions for the billionaire Charlie Munger.
9 divisions! That's insane!
Right. And despite achieving massive growth, Holmes realized he was completely trapped.
Yeah.
Because he was a classic got-a-minute manager.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning all day long, staff would just pop their heads into his office and ask, got a minute to look at this?
Oh.
Got a minute to help me with that?
Oh, yeah. And as anyone who works in an office knows, a minute is never just a minute.
Never.
It's a 20-minute detour. Minimum.
Precisely. And, it happens because managers often want to feel helpful. It feeds the ego, right, to be the ultimate problem solver.
Sure, you feel indispensable.
But the reality was, it meant constant, unpredictable interruptions. It led to Holmes working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, with absolutely zero time for proactive strategic planning.
Because he was just putting out everyone else's fires.
Entirely at the mercy of his team's immediate reactive needs.
Okay, but banning those interruptions seems great in theory. But you can't just lock your door, put on noise-canceling headphones, and leave your team stranded.
No, you can't.
I'd imagine if you cut off that chaotic access, you have to replace it with some sort of structured alternative.
That is exactly the pivot he made. He completely banned the spontaneous pop-ins. Just no more got a minute.
Wow, cold turkey.
Cold turkey. But to ensure the team wasn't paralyzed, he instituted highly structured, weekly 1-hour meetings for his 9 distinct impact areas. The departments that actively drove the business forward. He trained his staff to compile all their non-urgent issues, their questions, their roadblocks, and bring them to that specific weekly meeting.
Ah, I love that. Because that forces the staff to actually think about whether a problem is a true emergency or just a minor inconvenience they can sit on for a few days.
Exactly. It forces them to problem solve a bit on their own first.
And once you clear that structural hurdle and reclaim your schedule, Holmes gets into how to organize your own desk, which I found fascinating.
The time management steps.
Yeah. He outlines a time management philosophy that takes just 5 minutes of planning a day. But it requires a complete shift in how you handle information. And one of the core principles is this idea of touch it once.
Yeah, touch it once. Because the wasted time of rereading and reevaluating the same information is staggering.
Oh, totally.
Think about how often you open an email, read it, decide you don't want to deal with it right now, mark it as unread, and then go through that exact same mental process 3 days later.
I am so guilty of that.
We all are. But touching it once means when you open a piece of correspondence, you have to make a choice. You either deal with it immediately, delegate it, file it, or schedule a specific time to handle it.
Okay, let's unpack this because this touch it once rule makes perfect sense if you think about it like doing the dishes.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. So if you pick up a dirty plate from the dining room, carry it halfway and put it down on the kitchen counter, then later you move it to the sink.
Right.
And then finally, eventually you put it in the dishwasher that night. You've wasted multiple steps of physical energy.
So true.
If you just put it in the dishwasher immediately, the task is complete in one motion. Mental energy works the exact same way.
That's a brilliant way to visualize it. Just put the plate in the dishwasher. And, that leads to another crucial constraint Holmes enforces, making daily lists.
But not just any lists.
Right. Strictly limiting them to your 6 most important tasks, not 20 tasks, not a sprawling wish list, just 6.
Which is incredibly difficult.
It's so hard.
Because human beings consistently overestimate what they can accomplish in an 8-hour window.
We absolutely do. I mean, when you list 20 things, you inevitably gravitate toward the easiest, least impactful tasks.
Just to feel that dopamine hit of crossing something off.
Exactly. But by limiting it to the 6 most vital, proactive tasks and prioritizing the hardest one first when your energy is highest, you force yourself to tackle the heavy lifting.
And you have to build in time buffers, right, for the reactive work that will inevitably pop up.
Yes. And you ruthlessly ask yourself, will it actually hurt me to throw this away when you're dealing with filing?
So the psychological shift for you, the listener, is moving from being a passive victim of your inbox to an active architect of your day.
Beautifully put.
And if you just stop reacting to every new message ping and structure your schedule around your top 6 proactive tasks, Holmes calculates you can literally win back 6 weeks of productivity a year.
6 weeks. It's wild.
Reclaiming that time is an incredible first step, but it raises the obvious question of what you actually do with those saved hours.
Well, you have to invest them. You don't just go home early. Specifically, Holmes argues that you must dedicate 1 hour a week to systematically sharpening your team skills through mandatory training.
Mandatory training.
Yeah. Once the machine has the time to run, it requires constant, repetitive tuning.
And the book makes a stark contrast here between what it calls the tribal method of training versus structured, mandatory classroom training.
Oh, the tribal method.
Yeah, which is how almost every company operates, right? They hire someone new, assign them to shadow an older, experienced employee for a week, and just hope they figure it out.
Right, but the flaw in tribal training is that it operates like a giant game of corporate telephone.
Ha, yes.
The new person doesn't just learn the job. They inherit all of the older employees' shortcuts, their biases, and their bad habits. There's no baseline standard of excellence.
But structured training, on the other hand, builds something deeply physical. It builds muscle memory.
Yes, muscle memory is key here.
And Holmes shares this wild, almost unbelievable story about his own martial arts background. So he wanted to perfect his blocks and strikes, so he rigged up a cowhide rope with a softball attached to it and hung it from the ceiling of his bedroom.
Just a softball hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah. And he would swing it at himself. And at first, the ball just kept swinging back and hitting him right in the head.
Naturally.
But he forced himself to do it repeatedly every single day, applying that pig-headed discipline we talked about.
And what happened?
6 months later, his body reacted flawlessly without conscious thought. He could block the ball from any angle. But the payoff of that muscle memory went far beyond his bedroom.
Right, the car crash.
Yeah. Years later, he was driving 80 miles per hour, hit a patch of wet road, and crashed his car off a 265-foot cliff.
I mean, the sheer drop of a 265-foot cliff is terrifying. Most people would just go rigid with panic.
But because of his relentless training, his brain's panic response was overridden by his body's training. His mind signaled a crisis, but his body knew to relax rather than tense up. He bounced around the inside of that tumbling car, automatically blocking his face and vital organs before each impact, and he survived.
That is incredible. And when we translate that physiological response to a business environment, the implications are profound.
How so?
Think about it. When a crisis hits a business, or even just a really difficult, unexpected customer objection arises, an untrained employee essentially crashes off the cliff.
They freeze.
Exactly. Their amygdala fires, they tense up, they panic, they guess at an answer, or they just freeze entirely.
Hmm?
But a trained employee relies on corporate muscle memory.
Right.
They know exactly what to say and do because they have rehearsed that exact scenario 1,000 times in a safe, controlled environment.
Okay, let me push back on the reality of implementing this, though, because it sounds great. But if you run a high-volume sales floor or a busy customer support center and you pull your top earners off the floor for a mandatory hour every single week just to run through scenarios they already know, aren't they going to deeply resent you?
Oh, they might at first.
And doesn't shutting down production for an hour directly hurt immediate revenue?
It is the most common fear managers have. But what's fascinating here is that it is a complete illusion. Holmes illustrates this with the classic woodcutter analogy.
Okay, remind me of that one.
Imagine two woodcutters in a forest. Woodcutter A is a brute force worker. He hacks away at a tree from sunrise to sunset without ever stopping.
Just going at it.
Right. Now, woodcutter B constantly takes breaks. He sits down, stops swinging his axe. But at the end of the day, woodcutter B has chopped 3 times as much wood.
Wow.
So woodcutter A is exhausted and baffled and asks, "How did you outpace me when you were resting all day?" And woodcutter B replies, "I wasn't resting, I was sharpening my saw."
Oh, that is so good. That completely reframes how we look at downtime.
Doesn't it?
Taking your team off the floor for an hour isn't a loss of revenue. It's the maintenance required to triple their efficiency when they get back on the floor. But that brings us to the actual execution of that hour. Because if you just herd your top performers into a conference room and lecture them with a bunch of PowerPoint slides, they aren't building muscle memory.
No, they're just catching up on sleep.
Right. So how do we actually do this?
Which is why Holmes insists on interactive workshops rather than lectures. The goal of these weekly workshops is to actively develop and refine what he calls the 3 Ps.
The 3 Ps: planning, procedures, and policies.
Yes. You are not talking at your team. You are forcing them to actively engineer solutions.
We should differentiate those 3 quickly so everyone's on the same page. So planning is the high-level strategy, right? The what we are trying to achieve.
Right.
Procedures are the step-by-step blueprints, the how we do it. And policies are the firm rules and boundaries that keep everyone on track.
Exactly. And the most effective way to build a procedure isn't for the CEO to write it in a vacuum. Holmes details a case study about a carpet cleaning company that demonstrates the workshop method perfectly.
Oh, the carpet cleaners!
Yeah. So this company had a situation where a 78-year-old woman with a walker needed her rugs cleaned. The company picked up the rugs, and the technicians realized the protective pad underneath was totally degraded and ruined.
Okay.
But the salesperson involved never offered to sell her a replacement pad. When the CEO asked why, the salesperson admitted, "I didn't want to seem pushy."
Which is fundamentally a failure of procedure. You have an employee prioritizing their own comfort over providing a genuinely necessary service to the client.
It absolutely is. And the company actually offered 6 different upsell options, including new rug pads, Scotch Guard, specialized treatments. But the sales staff routinely ignored them because pitching them felt awkward.
So what did the CEO do?
Well, instead of yelling at them or writing a memo, he brought this exact problem to the team during their weekly workshop. He put the ball in their court and asked, "How do we structurally guarantee that we offer every client every service every single time without making you feel pushy?"
And the brilliant part is that the solution came from the staff themselves.
Yes.
They realized that if it was framed as a sales pitch, they would always hesitate. So they suggested changing the actual physical order form.
It's so simple.
They put all 6 upsells directly on the intake clipboard as a mandatory checklist. That way, they had to ask the customer about each one just to complete the paperwork. It transformed a stressful pitch into a routine administrative step.
But having the idea is only half the battle, right?
Right.
There's a huge psychological hurdle to getting the staff to actually embrace and execute that new procedure.
Oh, for sure. Getting people to change habits is the hardest part.
And Holmes refers to this critical step as get everyone to feel the pain.
Feel the pain.
Yeah. Before the CEO even asked the team for solutions during that workshop, he put a massive matrix on the whiteboard showing their individual sales numbers.
Ouch.
He systematically proved to the carpet salespeople that by avoiding those upsells, they had personally lost out on $20,000 in commissions that year.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because identifying a flaw in a system is just an intellectual exercise. But getting human beings to actually change their behavior requires visceral pain.
He really does.
It's like trying to convince a heavy smoker to quit. You can cite mortality statistics and medical journals at them all day long, and they will keep smoking.
Right, it doesn't feel real to them.
But if you sit them down and show them an X-ray of their own deteriorating lungs, suddenly the theoretical becomes deeply personal and they are begging for a nicotine patch.
That is a perfect analogy.
That whiteboard showing $20,000 in lost personal commission, that was their lung X-ray.
It instantly manufactures the urgency required for change. The key takeaway is that leadership doesn't mean having all the answers.
Yeah.
If you isolate the friction points, bring them to your team in a workshop, and clearly demonstrate how the current failure hurts them directly, your team will eagerly invent the very procedures you need them to follow.
So at this point in the blueprint, you've reclaimed your schedule, you're running weekly workshops, and your team is sharp and operating on procedural muscle memory.
The machine is running.
But an engine running flawlessly in a garage doesn't win a race. It needs fuel.
Yes.
And in business, that fuel is buyers. So this is where Holmes shifts the focus from managing the internal mechanics to becoming a brilliant external strategist.
It's a completely necessary evolution. Most businesses are stuck in a tactical mindset. They are entirely focused on making a single sale today.
Right, just getting the next dollar.
But a strategist zooms out, they look at the entire market and ask, how can every single interaction I have accomplish multiple objectives simultaneously? To bridge this gap, Holmes introduces a thought experiment he calls the stadium pitch.
Okay, picture the scenario, listener. You are standing on a stage in the center of a massive stadium, and every single seat in that arena is filled with your absolute ideal prospect.
Every single one.
Let's say you sell high-end office equipment. That stadium is packed with 50,000 office managers with purchasing power.
A dream scenario.
Right. Now, the market data Holmes provides reveals a fascinating breakdown of the psychology of that crowd. At any given second, only 3% of those people are in the buying now phase.
Just 3%.
Another 7% are open to the idea but haven't started researching. The remaining 90% of that stadium is either completely indifferent, actively satisfied with what they have, or just adamantly opposed to buying anything.
So think about what happens next. If you walk out onto that stage and deliver a standard tactical pitch, here's why our copiers are the fastest, here are our discounts, please buy from us, you are only speaking to the 3%.
And what does the rest of the stadium do?
The other 90% of the stadium is going to immediately stand up and walk out the doors because the information holds absolutely zero relevance to their current lives.
You've alienated almost the entire room instantly, so how do you keep 50,000 people in their seats?
Well, Holmes says the answer is education-based marketing.
Okay, what does that look like?
You have to stop pitching your product and start teaching the buyer something of profound value. You must leverage market data because objective data about their industry is infinitely more motivational than subjective data about your product.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. The book provides an incredibly clear case study regarding a community newspaper here, right?
Yes, the local paper.
So this paper was struggling to sell advertising space to local businesses, mechanics, hair salons, boutique retail shops. Their tactical approach was just traditional cold calling.
Yep. The sales reps would call up a salon owner and say, do you want to buy a quarter-page ad this week?
And the answer is almost always going to be a dial tone.
Exactly, because they were treating the entire market like the 3% who were ready to buy that day. So they completely overhauled their strategy using education-based marketing.
What did they do instead?
Instead of calling to sell ad space, the reps called those same local business owners and invited them to a free, catered lunch and learn seminar.
And the hook they used for the title was masterful. It was called The 5 Reasons All Retailers Fail.
It's brilliant.
It's so brilliant because it taps into universal anxiety. If you own a small retail store, your singular overriding fear is going out of business. You cannot ignore a seminar claiming to know exactly why your peers are failing.
It keeps the entire stadium glued to their seats. And at the actual lunch, the newspaper representatives didn't even mention ad space at first.
Really? Not at all.
Not a word. They presented rigorous, valuable data on the root causes of business failure. They discussed cash flow mismanagement, poor customer retention, and eventually the fatal flaw of inconsistent marketing.
Ah, laying the groundwork.
Right. Only after thoroughly educating the room did they seamlessly transition into demonstrating how consistent advertising, specifically targeting the affluent demographics reached by their local newspaper, was the single best insurance policy against becoming a failure statistic.
But playing devil's advocate here, what is the actual ROI on this? If I am paying my top-tier sales reps a high salary to spend their weeks acting like professors, teaching local hair salons about cash flow and customer service, aren't we completely losing the thread?
I know, it feels like a detour.
Right. At what point do we actually ask for the money and close the deal?
It feels counterintuitive, but the strategy is rooted in human psychology. When a prospect feels they are being aggressively sold to, their natural defense mechanisms immediately go up.
Sure, walls go up.
They view you as an adversary trying to separate them from their money. But educating them does the exact opposite. It builds deep, trusting rapport.
Okay, I see where this is going.
By the time those newspaper reps finally introduced their advertising packages, they didn't have to utilize high-pressure closing tactics. They had provided so much upfront value that they had fundamentally altered the power dynamic. They were no longer desperate salespeople. They were authoritative industry experts. They set the buying criteria entirely in their own favor, to the point where the business owners were practically begging to buy.
So you don't pitch the product. You meticulously educate the prospect on the severity of their pain points until your product emerges as the only logical, undeniable solution.
Precisely.
But I mean, executing that level of education-based marketing, standing in front of a room of skeptical business owners and commanding authority that requires serious talent, you can't rely on a timid, average employee to run this sophisticated of an engine.
You absolutely cannot. A high-performance machine requires high-octane fuel and highly capable operators. Which brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult phase of Holmes's blueprint, hiring the 1%.
The superstars.
Yes, you need absolute superstars to execute this vision.
And to define what a superstar actually looks like, Holmes utilizes the DISC personality profile, DISC, which categorizes behavior into dominance, influence, steadiness, and compliance.
Right. And for a top-tier sales or growth role, you are looking for a very rare specific combination.
High dominance and high influence.
Exactly. High dominance, which dictates a massive ego, extreme competitiveness, and relentless drive, paired with high influence, which dictates emotional intelligence, empathy, and the ability to instantly bond with strangers.
The synergy of those two traits is what creates a top producer. Because the high influence allows them to read a room, understand the prospect's deep-seated anxieties, and build that crucial educational rapport.
But it is the high dominance that ensures they actually close the deal.
Yeah.
High dominance individuals fundamentally believe they are always right. They possess such an unwavering belief in themselves and their solution that they simply do not crumble when a prospect rejects them.
Okay, but standard HR interviews are basically polite fictions, right? Everyone acts perfectly agreeable for 30 minutes. So how do you actually uncover if someone possesses that necessary high dominance before you put them on payroll?
Well, Holmes outlines an incredibly unorthodox, frankly abrasive technique called the pre-screen.
Oh, this part is wild.
It violates almost every conventional rule of human resources, but it is ruthlessly effective. When a candidate calls or arrives for an initial screening, the manager listens to their brief introductory pitch.
Okay.
And then, intentionally and abruptly, the manager rejects them within the first 2 minutes. They look the candidate in the eye and say, "Listen, I'm just not hearing superstar. I don't think you have the stuff to survive in this role."
Which is jarring. I mean, imagine hearing that. But the psychology behind it is fascinating.
Very.
An average candidate with low dominance will immediately deflate. Their ego is fragile, they'll apologize, agree with the manager's assessment, say thank you for your time, and just walk out the door.
Right, they fold.
But a superstar will view that rejection as an unacceptable challenge. Holmes recounts a legendary response from a candidate who was subjected to this pre-screen.
Oh, I love this story.
The hiring manager bluntly said, "I'm not hearing superstar," and the candidate didn't miss a beat. He leaned in and shot back, "Well, maybe you're deaf."
And the manager hired him on the spot.
Instantly.
Because that sheer audacity, that absolute refusal to accept a dismissal from an authority figure is exactly the armor they need when a real client tells them no for the 5th consecutive time.
That pre-screen is essentially a stress test for an airplane wing.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, like when engineers want to know if a wing can survive a hurricane, they don't wait until the plane is full of passengers at 30,000 feet to find out.
No, that would be disastrous.
Right. They put it in a factory rig and actively try to snap it in half. They bend it until it screams. If a candidate's ego snaps during a 2-minute manufactured confrontation in a comfortable office, they will never, ever survive the mathematical reality of sales.
Which is brutal.
Yeah, where it takes an average of over 8 rejections to close a real client.
It really forces us to confront how broken standard hiring practices are.
Hmm.
We typically hire based on who makes us feel the most comfortable.
Hmm.
We review polished resumes and have polite, nurturing conversations.
But comfort doesn't build a machine.
Exactly. The lesson here is that if you want a self-sustaining, highly profitable engine, you have to stop hiring for politeness. You must deliberately test their ego up front.
Test the wing.
Yes. And crucially, once you find those rare superstars, you must construct a compensation plan that disproportionately rewards their top-tier performance, so they are heavily incentivized to stay and drive your machine forward.
So when you step back and look at the entire architecture Holmes presents, you see how interconnected it all is.
It all feeds into each other.
You can't train a team if you haven't reclaimed your time from the got-a-minute culture. You can't workshop effective procedures if your team isn't feeling the pain of their failures.
Right.
And you can't deploy education-based marketing without the high-dominance superstars capable of delivering it. It is a complete shift from duct-taped reactivity to engineered precision.
And, the underlying theme of that entire shift leaves us with a critical thought to examine in our own lives.
What's that?
We have continuously contrasted the accommodating, comfortable, got-a-minute culture with the brash, high-friction, maybe you're deaf reality of a top producer.
The two extremes.
Exactly. So think deeply about your own career, your own team, or your own business. How much of your current stress, chaos, and stagnation exists simply because you are prioritizing politeness and immediate comfort over the high-performance friction required for true mastery?
Wow.
Are you doing the hard work of sharpening your saw, or are you just politely, quietly hacking away at the tree with a dull blade?
That is the ultimate question. You can either keep patching your engine together and hoping for the best, or you can apply the pig-headed discipline required to build something truly unstoppable. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take these blueprints, start applying them to your own chaos, and we'll see you next time.